Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Entitled People. Hope you're all doing awesome today. As usual, it's time to check out some more Reddit posts, so let's get into it, friends. Old guy swipes my shopping cart with his Prius. Expects to trade vehicle insurance. I'm still shaking my head over this. It happened several months ago. I was getting ready for a home project, and had picked up some corrugated steel roofing, a load of lumber, and 4 bags of construction sand from the local big box home improvement store. The orange one. The lumber was over 12 feet long. Everything fit on one cart. My pickup truck was parked in the parking lot, and I planned to push the cart there to load it, just like hundreds of other customers do. There's a high awning at the store exit, and after that there's the parking lot. There is no pedestrian painted crosswalk, but this is California. Parking lots are pedestrian right-of-way. Anyway, I check both ways before pushing this heavy, long, and unwieldy load into the parking lot. I let the Jeep coming from my right go by. The Prius on my left is a long way away, so off I go. I didn't realize how fast the Prius was going, almost 40 miles per hour. I had about 8 feet of lumber into the parking lot when he drove up on me. He swerved to miss, so he didn't hit me head on, but he did kiss the load of 4x8s with his right front quarter panel. The wood then laid a perfect crease all the way down the side of his shiny Prius, all the way back to his rear quarter panel. With 200 pounds of sand, another 200 or 300 pounds of wood, and maybe 100 pounds of steel, the cart didn't move. Heck, the wood wasn't even damaged. The driver stopped almost 30 feet away, put his car in park, and came to check the damage. He was old. Look, I'll be 60 this year, but I guessed he was easily 20 years older. Skinny and looking like dried jerky, but spry enough and alert. We asked if each other was okay. He checked the damage on his car, and out of habit, I took photos of the damage, his license plate, my cart, and the area. Then he came up and asked to trade vehicle insurance. I laughed in his face. My truck is parked way over there. Why would I give you insurance on it? He got upset and asked me how I was going to pay for his car. I pointed out that he technically hit a pedestrian in a pedestrian area, was going too fast, and saw me enter his path from 50 feet away. He had plenty of time to halt and let me cross. He was upset, then hit on the bright idea that maybe the store was at fault and liable for parking lot accidents, and said he was going to talk to the manager. After he left, I decided I wanted to stick around and see what happened, but I needed my stuff loaded, so I left my cart parked out of the way and brought my truck under the awning and started loading. The old guy and a manager came out, and once the manager understood what happened, she explained how the store was not liable. He talked about suing the store, and she shrugged and told him to go ahead. But since he said lawsuit, she couldn't talk anymore, and she left. He came back over to me and asked how was I going to make this right. I told him nicely that since I had no damage, I didn't need anything from him running into me. He said I ran into him. Really? Look at your front quarter panel. And that he was calling the cops. Okay dude, you do that. I know something about the cops in the city. Unless there's a shootout, a lot of money, a lot of drugs, or a body, their response time can be measured in hours. Or never. So I went back and finished loading my truck. Then I got in and sat in the AC to cool off. Finally, I wrote my name on a paper and my telephone number. I gave it to the guy and told him to give it to the cops when they arrived. And then I left. About 5 hours later, a cop called and asked to trade information about the guy. Basically driver's license info. They were still at the store. The guy sounded frustrated. So I read off the details of my license and the cop read off the details of his license. No insurance info was traded. He just wanted to know who to sue. The cop emphasized the gentleman's birth date. That's when I learned he was 98 years old. Good on him for keeping his license. The cop emphasized this was a civil matter, and the old guy could sue. I said I understood and looked forward to it. And that's where we stand. I've received no court summons. No other action. My backyard goldfish pond is still in work. So I think this is just a case of someone being so stubborn that even though in the back of their head they know they're at fault, they just can't admit defeat, which is why he just kept going on and on trying to find someone else at fault instead of himself. And of course he didn't actually try to file for a lawsuit. I mean, anyone could have guessed that. Even someone with 2 brain cells could tell you that would just be a waste of time for him to even try. How I got a terrible manager so embarrassed and stressed, she quit. I worked under a manager a few years ago who was awful in every sense of the word. She would throw personal belongings into the garbage, things like designer purses, coffee mugs, etc. Her excuse was they shouldn't be laying around in the open. I understand that, but you don't throw people's personal belongings away. This manager also enjoyed making our lives hell. She would add extra work on us from previous shifts that were short-staffed, as well as add work when governing bodies would be coming in to clean up the area. We would tell her we didn't have the already hilariously ridiculous time to get the impossible work done. She started suggesting we skip our breaks. Whenever we complained we didn't have time to complete work, she would say, "Oh, I never got breaks whenever I worked for 40 years before getting this position." She'd even say things like, "Oh, your breaks aren't that important." Me being nice to people's face to a point shouldn't have been messed with. I emailed the general manager of the building, as well as his assistant, a union representative, and our union president. I explained how our manager was treating the staff regarding our breaks, and how our belongings were literally being thrown in the garbage. Nobody responded to my email, but with the system we used, you could see everyone who saw it. So when everyone saw it and I received no reply, I replied to the email. Failure to respond appropriately within a week will result in this email being forwarded to the Ministry of Labor and Human Rights Board. I received 2 emails from the union. One was the representative saying he did not agree with the manager's comments, the other from the general manager saying he would deal with the issue. The next day I came in for my evening shift. The manager was standing next to our reporting area looking very upset. She pointed at a paper on the wall and explained that the general manager gave her that, and that we were to sign off when we took our breaks, and if for whatever reason we missed it, she was to pay us overtime for it. She then took me aside and told me she did not understand why someone would report her for, quote, cracking jokes. I responded with, "Jokes are made when everyone laughs. When you made your jokes about our breaks and throwing our belongings out, not even you were laughing." She quit 3 days later, stating, "Too much stress." Edit. I also forgot to mention there was once I was off work hours and still there, holding my thermos mug, and she came over to the reporting area and grabbed it. I told her I was off the clock and to not touch my belongings. She told me I wasn't allowed to have it there and went over to the garbage with it. I grabbed the papers she was just carrying and held them over the paper shredder and told her, if she throws my mug out, her important papers are going in the shredder. She gave me a lecture, so I told her how inappropriate she was. She eventually put my mug down. I grabbed it and told her that next time I'd be billing her for that. This manager was definitely on a massive power trip, but when someone finally does something about it, apparently she can't handle it. But I do find it a bit odd that she would decide to quit just because now she has to let people take breaks. It makes me think that there could be more to the story that OP isn't even aware of. It seems possible that after she was reported for this, maybe she was losing her job, and her superiors gave her a chance to resign willingly instead of actually firing her, considering she was with the company for 40+ years. Am I the a-hole for not allowing people to access a swimming hole that has been used for generations, but is now on our property? My husband and I began looking at getting away from the city a few years ago. We had a small checklist. My husband wanted permanent running water, I wanted a house. We looked at many properties before we stumbled across this one by a fluke. It has 2 permanent creeks and a small house and is absolutely perfect. The property runs adjacent to a national park, so it will always remain secluded. We both instantly fell in love, and even though it was quite out of our budget, our parents both loved it as well and helped us purchase it. The property itself is almost 100 acres, and is the very last house on a dirt road. Also, I should mention that the seller of the property was an elderly man, who only used this place as a weekender and owned his permanent home in the city. One of the main things that drew us to this place is the permanent creeks. They are full of swimming holes, and one of the best ones even had a rope tied to the tree. Real estate agents said that a few local kids had used it, because the previous owner was never there and didn't mind. The road turns into an easement to get to the national park entrance, and the creek line is the boundary of our property to the national park. The swimming hole in question is about midway between the easement and our house. Over the years, the swimming hole has become well known to the locals, and there is a path that has been made to get to the swimming hole that is on our property. We certainly didn't like the idea of strangers walking so near the house, so husband puts up a wire fence across the path and a no trespassing sign. Within days of putting it up, a woman walks around the fence into our house to yell at us, saying that she had been walking this path and swimming for 30 years. We politely tell her that it is private property, and just because the old owners didn't mind doesn't mean we do as well. Less than a week after this incident, somebody posts about the fence in our local suburb Facebook group, and while many people were angry, many understood as well. We're not asking people to not swim. We don't own the water. We're just asking people to go to the national park side to access the swimming hole, because we do own right up to the water's edge. However, about another week later, our sign is stolen and the wire fence is cut. We have made it very clear what our reasoning is. We purchased this property for privacy, and so far people are more invasive than if we had just purchased in the city. Just today I was out mowing. We haven't replaced the sign or fence yet, and 3 girls come walking from this path and walk directly across the front paddock, essentially our front yard. Am I the a-hole for wanting to protect my privacy? Edit. I tried to sketch the layout. Sorry, it's not great. I didn't really want to say this, but I'm a 26-year-old female, and my husband works away for 2 weeks at a time, and there is no phone reception at all. Safety is a valid concern. We haven't sought any legal advice, and I doubt we will. We'll try a few more peaceful resolves. Signs, clearing a new path on the other side, and planting plants on our own path. And if nothing works, then that's it. They win. It's not a war I'm willing to wage, because I do actually want to continue living here. I think it's pretty apparent that OP is not the a-hole here. It's their own property, they have the right to restrict it however they want. And not to mention, if people kept accessing the swimming hole via your property, it might even be a liability, if someone were to get hurt or drown or whatnot. This seems to be a common trend for property in rural areas, where land is accessed by the public for years at a time because no one is around to really care. But eventually someone buys it that does care, and it takes a while for people to get the message that they're not welcome there anymore. And in this case, they can easily just access the water hole from the other side, on the national park side. It might be worth it for OP in the long run to build a bigger and stronger fence, and maybe set up some trail cams too. Hope those 8 customers were worth it. Back in the Stone Age, known as the 80s, when Karen was just a pretty name, 8 proto-Karens went out for lunch at an upscale restaurant. They had a wonderful time at their lunch, sending their waitress, Mindy, scurrying for more of this and a side of that, snapping their fingers for more coffee now. Mindy kept her cool and served them courteously and efficiently, but the Karens were never satisfied and kept asking more of her. You know the type. At the end of their 2-hour stay, the lady's bill came to $200. They paid, then handed Mindy a $5 tip. Mindy stayed calm and handed the tip back. With dignity, she explained, "I can't accept this. It is an insult to my service." Being proto-Karens, of course, they complained to the owner, who fired Mindy on the spot, right there in front of the smirking customers and the whole restaurant. A regular customer, a local executive, was dining there at the time, and saw the whole thing unfold. He was livid about how his favorite hardworking server was treated. He did 2 things after that. First, he paid his own bill, and assured the owner he would be sharing the story of how Mindy was treated around the local business community. Second, he walked Mindy out and offered her a job. The young exec was my dad, and Mindy ended up working for him for the next 20 years as a trusted lieutenant in his firm. Mom loved her, and Mindy was like an extra grandma to me. The restaurant lost a ton of business. Mindy was well liked, and Dad had, well, still has, a way of getting his messages heard by as many people as possible. Well, that's going to be it for today, friends. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more, and I'll see you all next time.